Firstly, I wouldn't overload myself with work. It's very easy to do that when you first start. You're afraid of turning the work away, so you say yes to everything. But you quickly realize that the work is always going to be there. Money is the one thing that will make or break self-employment. So if you prepare yourself beforehand, it will make it a lot more easier for that transition.
Why should people care about this conversation?
Well, there's a lot of differences between what people think what it's like to be self-employed, going from employed, and what the reality is of being self-employed, coming from an employed background. So hopefully a little bit of my experience will give people a bit more of an insight as to whether it's the right step for them or not.
This is the FieldRocket Podcast. I'm your host, Tulloch Priest, and today we're joined by Chirag. Chirag is a gas engineer and he is the owner of CP Utility Solutions. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Today's episode is all about the pros and cons of being a sole trader. And so if you are a sole trader looking for tips, or if you are employed and actually looking to be self-employed, this episode is for you. Because when you're employed by a company and you see how much you're being charged out to the customer, and then you're also obviously aware of what your income is. There's quite a big difference.
Absolutely.
And then how do you like what is that difference? Like if I was to sort that, maybe I just go out and work for myself, and you know all of that is mine.
So it's very easy to think that, okay, if I go self-employed, I'm going to make a lot more money. I'm going to have a lot more time. And yes, I mean, that is one of the benefits of it. But when you're running your own business, you have to remember that you now have to do your own taxes. You now have to manage your own holiday period. If you're sick, you don't get sick pay. And yes, when you're working self-employed, you think you're going to have more time, or you can work whatever hours you want. But what you find ultimately is you'll end up working all the hours under the sun. So you might think it's all, nice, airy-fairy, working for yourself, being self-employed, running a successful business. It's great. Me personally, I wouldn't ever go back to employment.
So what's the difference? Like, okay, so less hours is not...
Less hours is not what it seems. Yeah. You can work whatever hours you want. So it means it gives you flexibility, especially if you've got children or if you've got appointments or anything like that. You have the power to control when to book your jobs and when you want to work and when you don't want to work. But what you find quickly is when you're becoming busy, you don't want to turn work away. So you actually find yourself working more hours than what you would have been working if you were employed.
Okay, so why do you say that you wouldn't go back to being employed?
Because I like to be under control. I like to be in control of my day, of my jobs, of my income, and.
Is it because you don't like being told what to do, or do you think it's like you prefer your own kind of?
I think it's a way when you're used to working in a certain way, and then you're told that you can't do this or you can't do that, but you know that you can do it, but they just don't want you to do it. It kind of makes you think, okay, well, I don't need to be told what I can. I know what I can do. I know what I'm capable of. I know what's right and what's wrong, and sometimes it's just a case of just doing things how you want to do it. Because even when I was in employment, there were jobs that I could get done like that, but we have to show that we're spending a certain amount of time on a job because the company is billing me out for X amount of time.
Okay, so you were just effectively, I don't know how to put it politely, but just wasting your time.
There's that as well, and not only that, on the flip side is sometimes the company will pile on an unrealistic amount of jobs on you to get through. Now, what that means is you find yourself potentially taking shortcuts and not actually completing the job properly because let's say you've got 10 jobs to get through and you start at 8 a.m. and you finish at 6 p.m. If you're working for a firm, you need to get those 10 jobs done. Now, all it takes is one job to go wrong, which is then going to have a domino effect on the rest of your day, but you still have to get all those jobs done. So in that sense, you then might find yourself having to take some shortcuts and potentially not completing the job 100%, but doing a temporary fix to then have that come back on you later on to then go back and do it again properly.
But if you're a sole trader, you would still, let's say you're in the scenario of you having 10 jobs to do that day and one's gone wrong. Yeah. What would you do? Would you just call?
So being a sole trader, firstly, I wouldn't overload myself with work. Yeah. It's very easy to do that when you first start and when you first start self-employed because, like I said, you don't want to. You're afraid of saying no. you're afraid of turning the work away. So you say yes to everything, but you quickly realize that the work is always going to be there. So I tend to sort of book maybe 4 or 5 jobs in a day. And then I know that when it's busy period, I'm going to get called on the day. There's going to be emergency call outs and things like that.
So you leave like a little bit of space, like in the winter time.
Yeah.
Maybe towards the end of the day, possibly.
Well, I kind of just spread my jobs out. So even if I know a job's only going to take me an hour, I might just block out 2 hours in my diary so that I space out. Because like I said, it might be a simple job. I've been to jobs which should have been in and out in like half an hour, and I've been there for hours because it's just gone wrong. So it's just about, from experience, managing your workload and your workflow so that you don't overload yourself and you allow time for error.
How many kind of like billable hours do you normally aim for in a day?
I don't really work on an hourly rate. All my jobs, I tend to do priced per job. So where I know I can do a certain job, I know how long it takes me. So I tend to price it per job rather than hours. The only time I'll charge an hourly rate is if there's an unknown variable, for example, leak detection,
some kind of investigation.
And even then I'll say, okay, look, I'm going to charge X amount per hour, but then I'll cap it at so many hours. So even if I'm there for longer, the customer knows that the maximum they're going to have to pay is going to be this amount.
That's quite nice for the customers.
Because I'm not there to pull someone's pants down. I am there to earn a living, but at the same time, got to keep it reasonable. So it's got to work for both parties. So the customer knows what the worst case scenario is going to be, but more than likely, I will try and resolve it within that time. And I know there's some people out there who try and squeeze that and spend all that time there. But the way I see it is, rather than me trying to make that maximum amount, I'd rather just get the job done, because I need to move on to the next job. And you don't know what the next job's going to entail, or so on and so forth.
And with the billable hours, do you kind of, I didn't quite mean to speaking to the customers, like how many billable hours, but in your mind, like when you're planning out the day, you're saying that you're kind of spreading out, but you still need to earn a certain amount that day.
Yeah.
Because you can't count travel, paperwork.
Exactly. So I have a set figure in my mind that I want to earn as an overall day rate.
Okay.
And then I work out what sort of jobs I've got in that day or in that week, and then you just sort of average it that, okay, over the course of the week, I should potentially be looking at earning X amount, divide it by the 5 days, and make sure that it kind of, because there'll be days where I earn less than my day rate, or what I want to earn as my day rate, and there'll be days where I'll earn way over it. So it kind of balances out.
Yeah, but you need to have that in mind, otherwise, you need to account for your holidays if you're sick.
And this is it. This is what
returns.
When you go into self-employed, you quickly forget that, okay, I can maybe earn more money, but then when I want to take 2 weeks off to go on holiday somewhere, I'm not getting paid holiday pay. That's literally 2 weeks. I've got no income coming in. So you kind of have to account for that. Sick days. If you've got kids, like school stuff, or the kids are ill, stuff like that, you've got to take time off. So you've got to take into account that you're going to be charging yourself out, or you want to earn a certain amount a day, but that's not all going into your back pocket.
No, you have tax.
You got tax, you got all your running costs, and then you've got to take into account unforeseen time off where you're not going to get paid for that. So there's a lot of financial thinking that goes into it as well.
Would you ever think about sort of expanding beyond being a sole trader?
A few people have asked me that, and to be perfectly frank, I've got no plans to sort of grow my business into a bigger business in that sense. So I'm quite happy working by myself. I love working with other people, as in, if I've got a big job, I'll get someone in to give me a hand, or if someone else has got a big job, I'll buddy up, we'll pair up on big jobs and things like that. But I've got no sort of intentions to take someone on as an employee or anything like that. And that's not because I don't want to give someone else an employment opportunity. It's because I don't feel I'm ready yet. And it's quite stressful enough running your business by your own.
Just yourself.
To then have to worry about making enough money to pay for someone else's wages as well. That's an added stress, which I don't think I'm prepared to take on at the moment.
Yeah.
So my way of sort of giving back is through social media. So although I can't take someone out with me or employ someone, if I can help someone by the social media content that I put out, then at least that's one way of me being able to give back to the community.
Yeah. Do you think at any point that will actually change? Like, are you reaching your kind of personal goals as a sole trader? Because there's quite a bit of pressure, that sometimes, like, when you're going to grow, all of those kind of things. But if it's working for you now, and you're not interested in learning how to manage people, all the HR, all the other bits that go with, employing people, all the responsibility.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Though?
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. So I wouldn't say never, because you never know what's around the corner. Initially, when I was employed, I never thought I'd go self-employed, because I was doing private work at the same time as I was doing the employed work. So after I finished my working hours on the weekends, or evenings and weekends, I was then taking on private work, and I thought, this is great. I'm earning from employment, and I'm also earning privately as well. So why do I ever need to stop this? But then it kind of got to the point where I was getting more private work, and I was actually having to turn away bigger jobs, which I could have made more money on than what I was getting paid from my employment. So that changed. Yeah. So I wouldn't ever say that I wouldn't grow my business, but for me at the moment, it's not the right time. And that's because I've got 2 young kids. It's not all about making, I don't want to be the richest guy in the world. It's not all about making a ton of money. I want to make enough money so that hopefully one day my wife doesn't have to work anymore. And I can basically earn enough to provide for my family, live a nice, happy life. Least is stressful enough being employed as it is. I mean, being self-employed, running your own business. So I'd like to minimize the amount of stress that I have, and find that balance between being able to spend time with my family, enjoying the fruits of my labor with my family, rather than having to worry about the stress of managing another employee at the same time.
I think there's a kind of there's a belief that you get more employees, you make more money. And I think that is correct, but I think that in the beginning there's a bit of a dip.
That's right. And I think the key thing is, what I've found where people have grown their businesses, is you have to come off the tools.
Yes.
Ultimately, because you can't be doing that and managing someone else or a team at the same time. And where I'm very hands-on, I find it very difficult to not do the job myself. So for me to even, I've taken out a couple of guys on a trial basis, and I always find myself sort of jumping in and just doing it, because in my head I'm like, you're taking so long. And it's not that I don't want to help the person, it's just my nature, because I'm just so used to being in and out and just getting the work done and working on the tools. I think the hardest thing for me, if I want to grow my business, would be to step off the tools and be a manager and manage a team. And I think once you can do that, then you can grow your business effectively.
I think so. But the other thing is that if you really enjoy hands-on and you don't enjoy managing people, I mean, why do it? You're pushing yourself into something you won't enjoy. And I don't think if you really don't enjoy managing people and growing and learning about running a business,
the business is going to suffer.
You're not going to make more money.
No,
you're going to be more stressed, less money, and you'll be kind of go up, because you do see some companies that sort of employ more and then they come back down.
That's right. Yeah, for me, this is it. This is exactly it. I genuinely enjoy what I do. So for me, when I go to work, I'm not waking up thinking, oh, I've got all these jobs to get through today. I'm getting up and I'm going, and it's a weird way to describe it, but it's like I'm going out to do a hobby which I'm getting paid for, because I do genuinely enjoy what I do. There's not a day where I think, oh, I don't want to go to work today.
Well, that's going to show in your work.
Yeah.
It's going to show your customers will know it, you'll feel it. Any other kind of tips for like employed people thinking about going self-employed or for sole traders?
I'd say save at least 3 months worth of wages before you decide to make the leap, because when you first go self-employed, you don't know what you're getting yourself into. You might have blank spots where you might not have work in, so you want to have a safety net. So that was something that someone told me before I made the leap to go self-employed. They said, make sure work out what you're earning in employment, and make sure you have 3 months worth of wages saved up, so that in case you have a quiet spell, you're not going to then be worrying about it. You also want to look at getting yourself a van set up before you go, your own set of tools. Just understand what you've been using day in, day out. I mean, if you're employed, most of the time they expect you to have your own tools anyway. Some companies might give you power tools and things like that. But where I was working, the only thing that they supplied us with was a van and parts, materials. Everything else was our own.
Your own tools, okay.
Yeah, so most people will have their own tools anyway. So it's just about when you're thinking about making that leap from employed to self-employed, you have to think about that. It's great, but there's a lot more responsibility involved. So be prepared for that. Yeah. You are now going to be the boss, the cleaner, HR, the accountant. Even if you hire an accountant, that's another thing. You got to do your own taxes as well. So you need to make sure that you're looking at the overall bigger picture before you make that move. Because yes, you can work whatever hours you want, but if you want to be successful and run a good business, you'll be finding yourself working more hours than what you were doing when you were employed.
I think you mentioned it earlier, how you kind of like transitioned. You're working full time.
Yeah.
You started doing a little bit.
Yeah.
I would suggest doing some social media posting, saying, here's my work.
Yeah.
Get your website, get your company registration if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Or getting a company bank account takes time.
Yeah.
And you want to do all of these things
Correct.
while you're employed.
Yeah.
And then just do the private jobs, learn a bit,
Yeah.
do a bit more, still while you're still employed.
Exactly.
And then when you can't, I think in your case,
you want it to be a seamless shift. You don't want it to be like, right, I've stopped employment, now I've got to start self-employment. You just want it to be like a smooth transition. So when I didn't set up as a limited company straight away. I initially just started just as a sole trader, but I had a separate bank account. So any of my earnings that came from the private work just went into there. So I knew that when it came to do my tax return, I knew I wasn't having to dig money out of my own personal bank account. I can
to pay the
tax bill. It's going to be paid out of there. So, and I didn't touch that money. I didn't use that as spending money or anything. If I needed to buy tools or equipment, that's what I used out of there, so that I can use that money to reinvest back into my business. Even when I was employed, so if I needed to buy some more power tools or tool bags or any equipment, that came out of there, and I had my separate personal bank account for literally my personal stuff.
So just keep it separate.
Keep it separate, because money is the one thing that will make or break self-employment. So if you prepare yourself beforehand, it will make it a lot more easier for that transition.
I think if you have that momentum already going, like if you're trying to do it from a cold start, you just need a lot more runway.
Yeah, because when you're starting from scratch, you've got too many things to think about. You're going to be panicking. Whereas if you're already doing it in stages whilst you're employed, then by the time the time comes for you to make that transition to self-employed, it's not even going to feel like a change. Because I literally handed my notice in, worked my notice period, and then finished on a Friday. And on a Monday, I already had a week's worth of jobs booked in. So it's just, you want to make it that way so that you're not stopping and now, right, I've got no work for the next 2 weeks. Yeah. Or I've got no work booked in at the moment, so where do I start? You want to make it in a way so that when you finish your employment, you've already got work lined up. So I made sure I had 2 weeks worth of work lined up from the date that I was going self-employed. And then from there, and you don't need to worry, depending on what type of work you're doing, where I'm doing a lot, I focus more on breakdowns. Mine's very reactive, so I'm never really booked up more than 2 weeks in advance, because if someone's boiler breaks down, they're not gonna be like, oh, my boiler's gonna break down in 4 weeks' time, can you come and fix it for me? If it's servicing or anything like that, then yeah, you can say, right, I'll book in for 2 weeks ahead or whatever.
Yeah.
If you're doing an install, like if someone's going to be doing bathrooms or whole house central heating and stuff like that obviously needs a lot more time and planning. So for that, you can say, right, I'm going to be on this one job for 2 or 3 weeks because I've got to do the rip out, I've got to do the first fix, then I'm going to get the other trades in, the plasterers, tilers, whatever, this, that, the other, and then I've got to go back in second fix. So in that sense, you might be booked up for the next 4 weeks because you know that you're going to be on this one job for a certain period of time. Whereas for me, if anyone else is similar to my line of work, servicing and repairs, don't panic if you don't have tons of work booked in, because it will just come.
But when you're first kind of starting out, would you be better off doing like the smaller stuff?
I'd say do what you're good at.
Okay, so even the big stuff, because I'm just thinking like if you get one big job, and then you don't get paid, or you get paid like a month later, that's quite a big impact on your cash.
Yeah, so cash flow is a big thing. Where I'm doing smaller jobs, it's payment as soon as the job's finished. If I'm doing a bigger job or I'm quoting for a bigger job and I've won the job, I always take a 50% deposit. So that will cover at least the materials, and then it will cover a bit of labour time. And then I always say, like, once the job's done, the balance is paid on completion.
Okay, so that's straight away. There's no like 30-day payment.
No. I know because I don't do massive jobs, but I know on the bigger jobs they have sort of staggered payments. So at once you complete this stage or this phase, X amount of percentage needs to be paid. So depending on the type of work you're doing, you always want to make sure that you got cash flow coming in.
Yeah, no, it's those initial period you just need to be. I think we've already covered it, but just need to be up and running.
Yeah, and that's why the 3 months wages saving is key, because you might find yourself like, okay, you've done a job or you're doing a job, but you're not going to get paid until a certain amount, but you still need to outlay for X, Y, Z. So you want to make sure that you've got 3 months worth of savings in the bank so that you've got a safety net.
Yeah, because the materials and stuff are expensive. The first April that comes up, they're going to learn all about tax very quickly.
Yeah. And then obviously, depending on what your turnover is, like I've recently had to go VAT registered as well. So that's then every quarter you got to submit a VAT return and everything. So all of that then piles on even more paperwork and stress and more costs as well.
Did going VAT, did that lower your income?
I thought it would.
Yeah.
But it hasn't, because I think it works two ways. In one way, I think it gives customers a little bit more confidence in you that, okay, you are a legitimate business because you're now a limited company, you're VAT registered. So it gives them a little bit more confidence that you are not just going to take their money and run off. And I think where I do more smaller jobs, the VAT amount that's added on, it's not going to be a considerable amount.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that there's not like an extra hesitation from the customer.
No, so like let's say if you're quoting a job that's $5,000, then plus VAT is now $6,000. Yes. So now that's quite a big chunk. You got to pay £1,000. Whereas if it's £100, then you only £20. So most people, they will, especially if they used you before, they will just be like, okay, well, it is what it is.
Okay, so you didn't have any like drop off, like when you transition from VAT registered or not?
I have had a few people saying, and they're new customers. They're like, it's a bit expensive. I'm like, well, I can't do anything about it. It's not going in my pocket. Yeah, so
you're not offering a discount, or this is what the cost, and then you want it, or
VAT is VAT. I can't do anything about it. So you might lose some, but I've not found it. I was a bit worried, thinking that, well, I'm going to be 20% more expensive than the next guy now. But I think that's where the social media stuff helps, because when people see what you do, and they can physically see that you're capable of doing a certain job, for the sake of 20 quid, are they going to shop around, or are they going to just get the person in to just get the job done, just for peace of mind?
Well, from a customer's point of view, it's actually really hard to get a gas engineer to come out. You can. It will sound a little bit bad, but it's just. By the time you've called round like a few, you've already wasted like an hour or an hour and a half. Yeah. And then you need to book time. You take time off work.
That's right.
They come around.
Yeah.
And, it's an extra 20 quid. It's like you've lost your earnings anyway.
Yeah, this is it. And I think this is what happens when people, they try to shop around, and, they might try to save 20, 30 quid. And ultimately, they might end up losing out more than that overall. So it's just, even for me, sometimes when I'm shopping around, what I've found is, since I've become self-employed and I've started doing my own stuff, I don't even shop around on things that much anymore. If I've got confidence in someone, for example, my van broke down a few weeks ago. I got a number off this mechanic actually it was a customer that I fitted a boiler for, and he's a car trader. So I called him. I said, "Do you know any decent mechanics?" He gave me this guy's number, and as soon as I called him, it's just the confidence that he instilled in me just by speaking to him. I didn't even bother shopping around. I told him, like, this is the van I've got. I've had the AA out. This is what they've diagnosed. Is this something that, he said, he asked me a few questions about the van. As soon as I told him, he said, yep, I know what it is. Roughly, this is what it's going to cost you. Worst case scenario is going to be X amount. Best case scenario is going to be this amount. I was like, do you know what? Fine. Just get it done. Maybe if I shopped around, I might have saved £100 here or there. But for me, it was just, I need my van because I need it for work.
How much would a broken down van cost you? Like you would lose a day at
So
least.
I had to then get a hire van. So that, I think overall it cost me about £300 for over, I think, 5 or 6 days. But that's because I know someone, I've got a friend of mine who works for Enterprise, so I got discount
I was
off of
going to say
that.
that's quite cheap.
Yeah.
Is it? So you got a deal.
It cost me, I think, £30 a day.
That's really good.
Which is really good. But that's only because my friend works for Enterprise. But other than that, you're looking at £40-50 a day, which is still not too bad if you can carry on working. But then it's not so much the financial outlay of it, it's the time. Because now I haven't got a van, I've got to get towed home. I've got to get the van to the garage. I've then got to go to the car hire place, get the van from there, offload all my tools from my van.
That's half a day at least.
A whole day, pretty much. So it's more the inconvenience of time than the financial inconvenience, because ultimately it is what it is. I need the van, I need it fixed, and look, it's a business expense. So in my head, I'm not thinking it's not directly coming out of my pocket. It is going to come out as a business expense. So it's not going to hit me personally that much. It's more the inconvenience that it's causing me to now having to rearrange everything. Because when you're in your hire van, when you're in your van, you know where everything is. I've got my van racked out at the back, so I know where all my parts are. I know where exactly all my tools are, what I need to get. And you can't put everything from your van into this hire van. And there were times where I went to jobs and I was thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I'll get that from the van. Get to the van, it's not in this van. So it's that sort of inconvenience which then creates that unnecessary stress. It slows you down, stresses you out. Yeah. Because financially, it is what it is. Like I said, you need the van fixed, you need it on the road, you need it to work, but it's just the inconvenience that it causes.
Well, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate you coming onto the show.
No, it's been good fun.
And yeah, it's just very helpful. It's good to have the insights.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, really appreciate you coming in.
Ooh,
nice meeting you.
And you as well. Yeah,
likewise.